Our next and last speaker for this session is Lena Jöhnk. She is a cultural scientist currently writing her PhD thesis on socially engaged art at the Hafen City University in Hamburg. From July 2017 and on, she will be the Cultural Program Coordinator for Northern America at the Goethe-Institut Washington in DC.
Thank you very much for inviting me. So my speech is also a little bit dense in a theoretical sense, but I try to speak slowly as I'm also not a native speaker, so that you can follow. The examples Nigel Thompson gave us show in an impressive way that socially engaged art has an impact. You also mentioned this. In his book, Seeing Power, Thompson wants to consider how art and activism actually operate in everyday life. Parting from this, I would like to concentrate on two questions. So I think here's one chart missing, but doesn't matter. I will read out this question, the two questions I would like to focus on. The first one is, why does socially engaged art has an impact in society other than in social work? And the second question I want to focus on is how it is possible to analyze a socially engaged art project. I know this is a very big question and I won't answer these questions totally, but I will try to focus on them from a theoretical perspective, referring to two theorists. One is Armin Nassei and the other one is Andreas RECKWITZ. So when we speak about impact, when we speak about impact, how should we name this impact in order to be more precise? Stephanie also mentioned the word impact, so I have slightly different meaning about this. So what about the term effect? Textbooks of sociology of art usually do not expound the term effect. This is comprehensible insofar as the effect of art, in the sense of an always valid cause-effect principle, is not verifiable and therefore not a valid category. This leads to the conclusion that it is better not to use the term effect when describing how art can produce social change. Instead of the term effect, it is much more appropriate to use the term social function, in my opinion. This term is better defined in relevant literature, and I would like to refer here to Armin Nassei, as promised. Armin Nassei thinks about the function of art in relation to society with reference to Niklas Luhmann, and he says, quote, "The function of art is not a function only for art, but for society. Art could make visible that social order must be produced, not discovered." So I would like to expound this argument a little further. Nassei's intention is to analyze the special practice through which art evolves. He states that art, in contrast to speech, money, or religion, has the potential to make itself visible as a medium. This is possible by paying attention to the spread between signifier and signified, instead of making it disappear. So such a sign theoretical perspective is also very well described by Umberto Eco, who speaks of a message which is ambiguous and provoke uncertainty, so that one starts to observe in order to know how it is made. Also, Nigel Thompson points on the ambiguous characteristic of art, as you mentioned before. According to Nassei, art points on contingency, understood as the improbability of any formation. Nevertheless, art is in no manner random, but rather characterized by a huge amount of authenticity and originality. Thanks to these characteristics, art is able to draw attention to the fact that the social is coded on multiple levels and therefore seems different depending on the perspective taken. Art seems then to explore in more detail a part of society in which the multivalent, the double meaning, and the ambivalence is not immediately smoothed away. This is also what distinguishes art from social work or activism. Pablo Higuera mentioned that the double function of socially engaged art in the sense that it does not only serve a community but propose a symbolic statement in the context of our cultural history. So this is possible thanks to the capacity of art to make itself visible as a medium and to show and withstand contradictions and ambiguities. So this sounds all very theoretic. So this is why I would like to cite an example in order to make it a little bit more clear. So the example I would like to cite is the art installation Homeland by Theodoros Zafiropoulos. I think many of you have already seen this. It's here placed on the Goethe-Institut campus, and it is part of the Artecitya project you will hear more about later. So the project has many layers and plays with stories and feelings in the context of our cultural history. So if you see it, it is not instantly clear what it is, as you can see on this picture. A wall, which until then has had the mere function to separate two areas, suddenly comes into our awareness. And the symbolic meaning of this wall and the texture of the wall bring up ambivalent associations, so negative and positive ones. So one starts to think about this ambiguous object, which is possible through the artwork. So it is not only an object, but it is closely interlinked to a practice. So this leads to my next point. So now I would like to put emphasis on the practice. I would like now to focus on my second question, which is relevant for talking about the quality of socially engaged art projects. So the question is, how it is possible to further analyze a project of socially engaged art? Which terminology should be or could be used? As Pablo Higuera said, socially engaged art is something more than just a symbolic act. According to him, it is an actual practice, a real social interaction. Nevertheless, it has a symbolic layer. This is also what Stephanie mentioned. So one possibility is to first ask what are the main components of this type of socially engaged art. So since the art projects are very different, so it's a very hard task to identify these main components. But what is for sure is that most of the projects involve agents and some kind of action, so which usually comes with using artifacts. That means that either the artist or some people he has instructed or the so-called audience are doing something using different objects. One could say they are practicing. This means they are creating something by doing, also as Max Bielmann in the beginning said. Social practice is a term which is latterly used very much in socially engaged art. For example, Pedro Reyes used it, as you have heard in the video statement. That demonstrates how central the term practice is for this kind of art. But what could be understood exactly as practices? At this point, I would like to propose to focus on socially engaged art from the perspective of the theory of social practice, as the German theorist ANDREAS RECKWITZ describes it. The theory of social practice is a cultural theory which has a particular understanding of the cultural and the social. So it understands the collective order of culture not as a mental knowing that or a discourse, but as a practical knowledge, a know-how. That means the social lies in the practices. So that is to say that the practices are the smallest units of the social. If you divide them, then they lose their meaning. A social practice is not only bodily movements, but also could be mental routines, or a knowing how, or a routinized relationship between persons as well as persons and objects. Okay. The practice are carried out by individuals who could be called agents. Agents are then body-mind complexes who consist in the performance of practices. It is to say, agents could be regarded as carriers of routinized, over-subjective, complex bodily movements from interpreting and knowing how. So, lots of practices needs for their fulfillment artifacts. Artifacts are neither only objects nor only symbolic vehicles, but things which become part of the social practice by their usage. So, the understanding of action in the theory of social practice is crucial then. It is important to understand action first and foremost as a doing, which is based on implicit knowledge. The knowledge is not there before the practice, but it is incorporated in the practice. So action in the sense of doing a practice means using a know-how with which the agent creates their meaning for the world. The meaning of an object and a person in that world is known by the agents implicitly, so that they can deal with them in an appropriate way. Emphasis is put on the implicit of that knowledge. It is not a knowing that, which could be explained by the agents, but it is a know-how, a set of implicit rules. So when we analyze socially engaged art projects, this means that it is important to reconstruct this implicit know-how with its different layers. So to conclude, I would like to sum up to which extent the theory of social practice means considerable shift in our perspective on the social in the agent and the interaction, and why it works well as a theoretic perspective on socially engaged art. So to focus on practices, as this theory I presented to you does, means that it is possible to see socially engaged art as an actual, not a symbolic practice, which is what Heidegger demands when he says that socially engaged art should be in that long-term exchange of ideas, experiences, and collaborations. By putting the practices in the center of the analysis, it is possible to analyze actions as, for example, a discussion, an atmosphere, a performance, or something like this. And the second point is the second possibility to analyze with this theory is that you can analyze dialogue. Dialogue, which is an important part of socially engaged art. You can understand dialogue then as a practice. That way, the theory of social practice allows to study the structure and the dynamics of a conversation taking place in socially engaged art, which is important because a lot of these kind of projects consist of dialogue and conversations. So, in contrast to other social and cultural theories, the body is important in the theory of social practices. This is not the case in all theories. This is why I mentioned it. So it is possible to really look at the body and analyze it as kind of part of the social engaged art. So, and my last point is that artifacts. So I talked about artifacts, and artifacts are really part of the art, part of the practice. So they are not only there; they are taking into account, as you have seen, for example, in Heidi Kleer's presentation, the practice is made out of what is already there. So the artifacts, the relations, the buildings, and so on. So social practice does not take place in the white cube, but does not take place in the white cube, and this is why a theory has to take this into account and really analyze dialogue and taking and the artifacts and everything which is already there. So thank you very much.